Hey everyone, if you are new here, my name is Stephanie and this is my channel, Simply From Scratch, where I share with you a variety of different recipes and meal ideas that I like to make for my family. For those of you who've been around, I am still at the tail end of my recovery time. The second surgery I had turned out to be far more serious than even the doctor was expecting. So the recovery time went from 4 weeks to 7 weeks to more like 10 weeks. So hopefully I'm not facing another surgery and everything was taken care of. But in the meantime, while I'm not ready to really get completely in front of the camera again, I thought I would share with you all the meal prepping that I did with my family to get us ready to have a month's worth of meals. So that way it was really easy on my family to just pull something out of the freezer, and either pop it in a crock pot or just let it thaw and warm it up in a pan, depending on what it was. Now I will share with you all the list that I left for my family so they could just take a look at it and pull out what they wanted. But what I decided to start with first is soups. I wanted to go ahead and get those into the crock pots, and this one is a chicken tortilla soup. As you will see, I will link the recipe below. I do tweak it just a touch when it comes to the black beans that you'll see here in a minute. I only add in 1 can instead of 2, but that's just because it's a personal preference. It makes it a little bit easier for my daughter to eat because she cannot eat beans. And yes, I could leave them out, but by just doing 1 can, it makes it easy for her to have the soup and not actually eat the beans. So anyways, this was really good. We really enjoyed this soup, and this is just a great one to use year round. Throw it in the crock pot. This is a double batch of the soup, and then divide it out into containers and keep it in your freezer, and pull it out and throw it in a crock pot if you know you're going to have a busy day and you don't have to worry when you get home from your day on what you're going to have for dinner. So as you see, you continue to watch the put it together, but again, I will link everything below so you guys can see the recipes. And then for some of the meals in this video, I am not going to be showing step by step on how I do things, and that is just because I've put those meals together in other videos, and I will make sure to link those below as well so you guys can check those out. As you can see, the crock pot is getting quite full. I'm just trying to get everything kind of stirred around just so it doesn't all settle directly to the bottom. And as you're about to see, when I tried to put in all of the chicken stock, it was it was a bit too much. So I did have to pull some out, but it wound up working. Now, if you have a bigger pot and you want to keep it on the stove, that works too. But this gets you close. This is a 7-quart crock pot, and so it comes super close to holding it, but this worked out for us, and so it wasn't an issue. But you will see in just a moment that I do have to pull a little bit out after I add in the corn. And then for the corn, you can use frozen or canned corn. I chose to just go with frozen because, again, that is what I had in my freezer, and I was really trying to use up what we had in the house when it came time for the meal prep, just because I didn't want to spend a lot of money at the store, but still wanted to make sure that we all had good and nutritious food to eat during recovery. And what we discovered later is that while I do make soups for the month, we were not anticipating after the surgery that I would not be able to chew anything from it. What I had done was reconstructive ear surgery, and so grateful for friends who brought soups that I didn't have to chew so I could eat something. So we were able actually to take this meal plan and make it stretch to about 5 weeks, which was great. And as you can see, I had to pull some of it out because it was just a little too full, but that's okay. It wound up working out great. Everyone loved this. This gave us 3 meals to feed everyone, and that includes even feeding college group on a Thursday night later on in my recovery time. And so it was a huge hit, and it made so much soup. Okay, so now it's actually the end of the day, and so the chicken has been cooking all day, and I pulled it out and I am just shredding it so then I can put it back into the crock pot and then allow everything to cool so then I can divvy it out into containers and get it into the freezer. But you can choose whether or not you want to shred, if you want to slice it, if you want to chunk it. I just find that shredding is better, and then it winds up dispersing a touch better in the soup, but that's just a personal preference. Now I'm going to go ahead and prep all my peppers and onions for the fajitas. I decided to go ahead and just freeze them, which is not something I typically do when it comes to making fajitas, but I wanted to keep meal prep or dinners as easy as possible for my family, so that way any of them could grab out what was needed from the freezer and put dinner together. I just didn't want there to be too much of a concern or worry about dinner, because for me, I wanted to make sure it actually helped my stress level to have everything in the freezer and easy for my family. And so I did find that while I normally don't do this, I actually really liked freezing the peppers and onions for the fajitas. I felt like when I went to thaw them and cook them, they actually caramelized really well in the pan. And so it may be something I do again in the future as I meal prep. That was really successful, and I actually really enjoyed it. However, normally when I do fajitas, when I'm feeling well, then I just cut and slice, I should say, fresh. Now, as you can see, I'm putting everything into these vacuum seal bags. I have found that these have been tremendous when it comes to keeping things fresh and keeping ice off of meats, vegetables, and this worked out really well. So you will see as I use this for a lot of the different things that we prep in this video. As you could see, I also had labeled those so I knew the date and what was in them, again, making it as easy as possible for my family. So what I'm doing now is I'm just prepping the rest of the vegetables for the curries. And so I tried to do like things with like to make the most of my time in the kitchen, because I knew this was going to take several hours, because again, this is wound up being actually over a month's worth of meals that we were able to get out of this. And of course, lunches, there were leftovers. So this was really worth all the time and effort. And so now I'm just prepping my vegetables for the curry, and I made this a double batch. And I will say that in the future, if I make curry again, which I likely will, I will not put in the vegetables until the day of, because we found that by freezing them, while worked well with the fajitas, it did not work as well with the curry. Now the curry tasted fantastic, you could not even tell. that it was frozen and made ahead of time, but except for the vegetables, they were a bit on the soft side. Now, if you don't mind soft vegetables, please put them in there and it works totally fine. But for us, we like our veggies just a touch crunchier, and so I will just do them fresh next time if I do a freezer meal again with the curry. Okay, now that all my vegetables are prepped for what I need for meals, I'm moving on to making the curry. Again, I was trying to get the soups and the curries, things that needed time to cool down, done first, because those were also going to be the biggest bulk things that I was going to be making. And one thing I didn't show you guys is that we had bought a package of chicken from Costco, and my husband was so gracious and cleaned them and sliced every chicken breast for me to make it so much easier for me to put the meals together. And what I was also able to do, that I believe you'll see later in the video, is have some sliced chicken left over that I could put in a bag, vacuum seal, and then have it for whatever meal we wanted to make with the chicken, because with chicken it's so easy just to change up the flavors and just kind of throw something together. So in my pan, as you can see, I added in some olive oil in the chicken. Now I will make sure to link the recipe below of exact measurements. Typically for this recipe, I just eyeball everything, because outside of the Panang curry paste, it's really easy just to put some garlic and some ginger and coconut milk in there to make it to the taste that you're looking for. And so I like to just take the easy route for this and use the already chopped garlic, the ginger paste in the tube. That really truly has become one of my favorite things in the kitchen. It works so well and just makes it so much easier. But if you have the time, use fresh ginger. You can't go wrong with that either. So to this, I'm going to go ahead and saute up with some salt and pepper as well on the chicken. And once the chicken has cooked all the way through, we're going to go ahead and then get the veggies added in. All right, now that the chicken is cooked, I'm gonna go ahead and add in all the veggies that I want. So the original idea was to make a Panang curry and then just a simple red curry. I do have a daughter that cannot eat shrimp, and Panang curry paste does have shrimp. So while vegetarian, it's not the chicken, the paste itself, it has fish, it has shrimp, and she is allergic. So I had doubled, or actually quadrupled, the veggies and the chicken, only to find out as I was starting to make it that she said she didn't want any curry. So I just went ahead and continued on and making all of it a Panang curry for the rest of us to enjoy, and then she just had something else, for the nights that we had this for dinner. So but this is a great dish, and again, you can I at least quadrupled it, if not a little bit more than the original recipe, but I will make sure to link that below, along with a link to the Panang Curry paste that I use. I know the video is going kind of fast, but I'm just trying to make sure this is a pretty long video that everything fits within. The Panang Curry paste is spicy and it can be hot, so you do want to start with maybe a tablespoon and then test it from there. We tend to like it a bit more on the spicy side, and so but I would encourage you to do about a tablespoon at a time and then taste it and see if you want to add more, because the heat will continue to build as it warms up, along with when you warm it up for dinner time. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm taking not all of it, but some of the sliced chicken that my husband had done for me, and I'm going to go ahead and make the chicken fajita mixture now, and then I'm going to be putting on all the seasonings and basically making the marinade and then freezing it as is, so that way it could be pulled out and cooked at a later time, which worked out great. I have never frozen this before. Again, most of what I do is all fresh cooking anyways. I don't typically do a ton of freezer cooking, so this was really like, you know what, we're just going to go for it. I know a lot of people do freezer meals. It's just not something that I have been really into. I don't know, maybe old school, just make dinner when it's time to make dinner kind of thing. You know, outside of maybe keeping soup in the freezer, usually I just make whatever we're going to eat that night. So anyways, this is chicken fajita. You're going to be adding in cumin and you're going to be adding in garlic. This is a double recipe, and again, I will make sure it is down below so you guys can check it out and see. You're also going to be adding in chili powder, salt, pepper, oregano, olive oil, and there may be one more spice, but we'll see as we get to it. Like I said, it's been probably 10 weeks since I've put all of these meals together. It really took me some time to recover and feel even up to voicing over all of this to get this to you guys so you could see what we had done for a month worth of meals. And like I said, I believe it's actually lasted us more like 5 weeks. We were blessed with some soup in the beginning when I got home because we discovered I could not chew. We weren't expecting that. I had reconstructive ear surgery, and so everything was so swollen that I really couldn't chew anything. So friends brought over soup. So there were 2 nights that I was able to eat something, and then my family didn't have to worry about pulling anything out of the freezer to cook it. So I'm going to go ahead and get the marinade on this and get this done, and then we can get this into the freezer. Now that the marinade is on the chicken, I'm going to just go ahead and get it into the vacuum seal bags and get it sealed up and packaged up. So this again worked really, really well. I was able to get them sealed right on what it was, and then that way it made it super simple for my family. Okay, now that the chicken fajita is all sealed up, I've got 2 packages of chicken left that I'm just going to leave plain. One of these is just plain, going to be labeled as like plain chicken. The other is for Mongolian chicken. And so because I don't actually marinate Mongolian chicken, it's a sauce that goes over it. That was just made at the time that we made dinner, and that was further on into my recovery where I could actually help with dinner and no one had to worry. As for the plain chicken, we wound up making the buffalo chicken baked potatoes, which again turned out to be a family favorite, and it really was a happy accident that I created that recipe. And it just happened to be that usually 2 chicken breasts will feed the 4 of us, not always giving us leftovers, but at least gives us dinner. And the chicken breast was a little small, wasn't sure what to do with it, and decided to get creative. And that's how I came up with the buffalo chicken baked potatoes. If you have not tried them, I will make sure to link the video below. They are so, so good. And I'm not even kidding. Like our children, I call them children, they are adults now, they still cheer every time I say I'm going to be making buffalo chicken baked potatoes for dinner. All right, now that the chicken is sealed up, this is our company chicken. I have another video of how I made this, and I will link that below, along with a link to these oven safe dishes. These can go straight from the freezer. Sorry about the camera shaking. Go straight from the freezer into the oven. Now, we bought several rotisserie chickens, and as you can see, my family was shredding and dicing it all up. The white meat was for us, and we were able to pull us out to use for a variety of different things. The dark meat we give to our dog. And so what I decided to do is to make some chicken stock out of the carcasses. That is the scraps from the veggies that I prepped for all these meals, and then we're just taking kind of like that gelatinous juice from the chicken and dropping it in there. And then we're also going to be adding in the chicken skins, the bones, to really get a really good stock. I do apologize, it kind of went out of focus there. Now I will be doing another video a little bit more in depth on how to make your own chicken stock, but this is just a quick little snippet. I didn't want to waste anything that we had and felt like this was a really great time to put together the chicken stock, because if we needed it going forward, we would then have it in our freezer. Now I'm just topping it off with a little bit more water. You want to make sure that everything is covered as well as you can. Drop in some bay leaves, 4 or 5 should do, and then go ahead and put it on your stove. Now again, I will do another video later about this. I believe I let this cook for a good 4, 5, 6 hours, something. I don't remember. Again, this was 10 weeks ago, so that's why I want to do a new fresh video for you guys. So once that's on the stove, I'm going to go ahead and take all of the chicken, whether it's dark meat or light meat, and get it repackaged into the vacuum seal bags. Like I said earlier, I have just found these to be a tremendous help in keeping everything fresh. When I buy frozen veggies, I will repackage them as well, and that just helps keep the icicles off of it and keep things fresher longer in the freezer. As with everything else, I make sure to label it. That is for our dog. His name is Remy. And then for us as well, I go ahead and write on, again, ease is the name of the game, to make sure that, one, I am not stressed out worrying about my family, and then they can just grab things and make it super easy. We all work from home, and it's not like it's hard for them to make food, but I do want to make it as easy as possible for them. Now that the chicken is done, I'm going to go ahead and start working on all the ground beef that we need. And so I'm going to be doing taco meat, and I did a couple of packages of this, and it froze beautifully, warmed up beautifully, and made dinner super, super simple when we did it. And putting together taco meat is pretty easy. Obviously, choose the seasoning that you like. The one that we use, I get from Costco, and I really like it. It's got a little bit of a kick, but it's not too overwhelming. Now, the one thing I did do differently this time than if I was just making taco meat for dinner that night is I did not add any water to the taco meat because I knew I was going to be vacuum sealing this and it would make a mess trying to suck out all the air. It would also be sucking out the water, and it would just be a mess. And so by just browning the meat and then adding in the seasonings, getting that just right and allowing it to cool, it was really easy to just pull it from the freezer, put it in a pot once it was thawed, and then just add a touch of water. And again, you could not even tell that it had come from the freezer at all. Now that the taco meat was done and cooled, I decided to go ahead and get it into, again, the bags. Just about everything you see, unless it fit into a container, goes into one of these vacuum seal bags. I can link below the ones that we use. It's definitely worth the investment. You can get a vacuum sealer that's not crazy expensive. Some of them can be very expensive. Ours was not. And again, it works great. I actually bought it for my mom and sent it to her so she could start using it for all of the fresh veggies that she had coming out of her garden. Because it's just her, she always has so much that she started to blanch and freeze things. And this was a great way to keep them as well. So I get 2 meals out of the taco meat that I prepped, and that was perfect. So when we do tacos, we will do it as either tacos, nachos, soft tacos. We do it a couple of different ways. I basically just warm up the meat and they get to choose how they want to do it. So again, you could see it vacuum sealed really well by not adding in any additional moisture to it. And by adding the water in when we were making dinner that night, worked great. It was so super simple. Now that the taco meat is done, I'm moving on to the meatloaf. And so I decided to just use that Kinder's caramelized onion seasoning. Meatloaf is one of those things that you can add pretty much whatever seasoning you want to it. Meatloaf is not my favorite meal, and so I just usually kind of wing it when I make meatloaf, and so it's just kind of whatever I feel like putting in. And as far as seasonings, that caramelized onion burger one worked really well, and I actually enjoyed it. And so this wound up being, as I made it, strictly just leaving the meat raw, not cooking it ahead of time, to just pulling it out and putting it into the oven. Now, for meatloaf, the meatloaf that I make, you will not see me use breadcrumbs. We have a daughter that has celiac disease, and so I don't even use gluten-free breadcrumbs. They're just not the same. But what I have found is by increasing the eggs in the recipe, it helps as being a binder to the meatloaf, where it doesn't just crumble apart and you don't even really need to add in the breadcrumbs. So if you go to make meatloaf and you don't have any, just know, increase the egg by 1 for your recipe, and that would be enough to bind together the meatloaf for you to enjoy. Okay, once I have it all mixed up, I'm going to go ahead and put it in this foil pan. Now, I opted to use foil for this just because I didn't have enough of the freezered oven safe baking dishes, and I really wanted to have those in particular for the company chicken and the curry as well. I felt like the foil would work just fine for the meatloaf, and I wanted to make sure it was something that really could, if needed, go straight from the freezer into the oven without having to worry about it. So I'm just getting it formed in there to fill all the crevices. Now, my husband made this when early on in my recovery, and so we did not top it with anything until the day that he actually cooked it. And to keep it covered so it stays fresh, just put a little bit of plastic wrap over it, and then follow that with foil, and that will help keep it freezer safe so it doesn't take on any funky flavors from the freezer, because sometimes that can happen. And so again, super quick and easy. Another great option to use with ground beef as well. Okay, now that the meatloaf is done, moving on to the lasagna. And I opted to use the marinara that I had in the house versus making my own sauce. It just made it so much easier. Plus, again, trying to utilize what we had in our pantry versus buying it. Just trying to, again, rotate the stock. So I didn't want to buy what I would normally do to make my own lasagna sauce. And this worked great. Everyone enjoyed it. It wasn't an issue at all. And so I honestly, if I needed to, I would absolutely use that again. Now, I do like to add just a touch of water to each jar just to get that sauce out. And you can't tell the difference at all. That water was added. So from there, I'm just going to be adding in some oregano and then some salt and pepper as well. And so again, that's why I didn't mind using the bottled marinara sauce, because I was going to be adding in some additional seasonings to it, and you couldn't tell. Now I do add just a touch of sugar just because the sugar helps to cut down the acidity in the tomato sauce. That is optional. You can do it or not do it. I just like to do it that way. It's how my great grandmother did it as well. Okay, so my family is a complicated one in the kitchen. We have sensitivities and allergies. We have a daughter that is sensitive to milk. While not an actual allergy, she just finds it better to not digest anything with milk, because who wants to be uncomfortable? I cannot blame her. So the first lasagna that I'm putting together is going to be her dairy-free one. Now I used those are the cheese shreds that she absolutely loves. She says they taste just like regular cheese. I will take her word for it. As long as she enjoys it, that's all that matters to me. So I am going to go ahead and put hers together. I did use a Pyrex glass dish. I will tell you that unless you have an old one, the new ones are not oven safe. They do have to let this thaw and come almost to like a room temperature. It can go from the fridge into the oven, but you do not want to take this straight from the freezer into the oven, because it could shatter, and that would just be a mess you don't want to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and get her lasagna assembled, and then I'm going to be moving on to the next one. Okay, so in this complicated kitchen of mine, I also have one who has celiacs and cannot eat gluten. And so now they're typically, and some might think this is crazy, if I go to make lasagna, I will make 3 different kinds. The sauce will be the same, but one will be dairy-free, one will have gluten-free noodles, and one will be regular. However, when I made this, I was trying to keep in mind that I was going to make it low carb for my husband, so that way he can keep his carbs under control. I decided to go ahead and use zucchini because the seeds are really small and wouldn't necessarily impact my daughter, who has an issue digesting the seeds. And so, as you can see, I'm just trying to get it the size right on the mandolin so I can go ahead and slice up the zucchini. Now, here is what I will say. I have never made lasagna like this before. This was, I'm just going to try it and see what happens, and I will be very honest. Now, I did not like it. My husband did. However, because of my surgery, my taste buds have been impacted, and so not everything tastes as good as it used to. I'm having to basically retrain my taste buds according to my doctor. So if something, unless it's just absolutely horrible, I don't eat it. It's very possible, because this was made early on after the surgery, that it was just because my taste buds were messed up. So my husband and daughter loved it. I just did not. But again, I really do think that was my taste buds. It's just one of those side effects from the surgery, which I wasn't really expecting, and it's kind of been a bummer. But they're slowly coming back, and the changes, I seem to be gaining more and more each day. So anyways, this just gets layered up like a regular lasagna. I will say too that I noticed that when it comes to this, it was very watery. So I may try, if I ever do this again, to pre-cook the zucchini to try to get some of that moisture out. Now, if anybody has a tip or a trick to that, please let me know. Again, this is just not normally how I do lasagna, because I will just use noodles. But again, I was trying to keep it carb free and also make it gluten free, just to take one thing off of my plate to make all these meals for the family. Okay, lasagnas are done. Now, this is the turkey that I brined and smoked. I do have another video on how I make my brine for pork. And so I use the same brine for everything. And so what we had done is just carved it up and then froze the turkey meat and pulled it out to eat it for sandwiches or meals or whatever. So I did not get any video of that, and I do apologize. Again, this was a lot to try to record and prep at the same time, given that my surgery was in 2 days before, 2 days after I did all this. And so this is the pork butt that we smoked as well. Again, we brined it and smoked it. I do have a video for that. I can link it below so you guys can see it. We already pulled it in and kind of shredded it. I'm dropping some to our dog just a little bit because he absolutely loves it. When I pull the Traeger out, and he knows something good is going to come off of that, and it's usually a pork butt. Now, I like to brine, smoke, and then freeze in the vacuum seal bags, and the vacuum seal bags are key to making sure that once it's smoked, okay, just so you guys know, I'm not giving him all of it. There is a trash can right there as well. So just so you guys know, is if you see me look like I'm not throwing him a ton of pork. Just don't want any comments on it. Just so you know, the trash can is right there. So anyways, when it comes to freezing, it is crucial to have those vacuum seal bags. I had tried freezing smoked pork before, put it in a freezer bag, and it never tasted good when you go to reheat it. It was gross. And so once I started vacuum sealing it, that literally just sealed in all of that flavor. So now when I pull them out as a quick lunch or a quick dinner to do barbecue sandwiches or pulled pork nachos, it tastes like it just came off the smoker. You cannot even tell that it had been in the freezer. So huge difference that these vacuum seal bags do when it comes to this pulled pork. Again, it is my favorite way to do it. I usually keep a couple of pork butts in the freezer because it's really great. Once we go through, I'll just brine, smoke, and put them in. And again, really quick and easy things for lunch or for dinner. Okay, now that the pork is done, I'm just taking my green beans that I bought, and I do like to take, once I go shopping, bring the bags home, I do like to move them into the vacuum sealed bags. Again, it helps keep them fresher longer by keeping the icicles off of the vegetables. And so it's just a really quick, easy thing to do. And again, then you kind of see what you have. Those bags don't get lost in the freezer. When I vacuum seal these flat, I can then stack them in. I have containers in my freezer because I have a stand-up freezer, and so that way I can stack them together in the container, and it just makes it easier to see what I have and then how much is left. And so I'm just getting the green beans done. I've also done this with broccoli, edamame. I like to do it with a variety, just really honestly whatever vegetables I have. Now, I do have some older things in the freezer that I never did this to, and now I'm kicking myself that I didn't start it sooner. But now going forward, huge difference, huge difference. And this is just the last little bit of the vegetables that I did in preparation for our month's worth of meals. And so again, just vacuum sealing everything made it really easy to grab and go. And honestly, we actually still have some of these in the freezer, and it's been 10 weeks, at least 10 weeks since I have done all this meal prep. So there was just some meals, everybody's like, I'm good with that vegetable. So okay, that's fine. Mom did not care because mom was recovering. It was fine. So, but again, works great to keep the vegetables fresh. Highly recommend. I just want to say thank you to everybody who stuck around while I have been gone for so long. I do have more video ideas that I want to make for you guys. I am just a little still slow going, trying to recover, not feeling 100% just yet. But again, this turned out to be way more serious of a surgery than even the doctor had originally thought it would be, until the week I went in for my pre-op, and then she was a little stunned at what she had seen with my ear. So anyways, we won't get into all that, but just wanted to say thank you guys for hanging around. I really do appreciate it. And as you're going to be able to see here in a moment, I have the chicken tortilla, the hamburger stew, which I didn't show in this video because I have another video on it. I will link below how that turned out. I repackaged these into other containers so they fit better in my freezer. This was just cooling, and then you can see the beautiful chicken stock. And again, I will do another video on that to give step-by-step instructions on how to do it because it was so good.